Do we need to do the poll?
I need to get one out, but Caitlin don't.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure if Caitlin can figure it out. Well,
No, it's just,
okay.
we gotta.
Okay. Will you send me an email?
I got it all ready, I just need to send it.
I need to send me an email so I remember I need to do a doodle poll.
So were you on the Mac call this morning?
Otherwise, I'll
Yes, I was.
Seeing my picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm always
Yep, if you
driving
just
to
send me
work,
that, I'll do
and
it.
so then I'm clicking in, and it works pretty
I went to
good.
vacation.
Of course, I can't see the
I was on
screen,
vacation to
but I
Colombia.
got the gist of what the dark people
Horrible.
were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we're getting that up, PowerPoint. We'll get that circulated around.
Everybody got COVID.
Ah, shit. That was like isolation.
I didn't realize during the legislative session. No. Actually, I got a text from Davis saying at like 12:30, hey, can I get a ride home today? And I'm like,
For almost 2 weeks.
That's not.
so I eventually did pick him up about 3:30. So I got home.
Horrible crime.
He stayed late to do some Spanish. And so I picked him
You
up
try to
as he
escape
was
the
walking
cold,
out.
but then you're stuck
60 second.
inside. That's horrible.
Cindy, are we ready?
Oh, well.
Sure.
Maybe, hopefully
Yes.
that'll go away. That thing will go away soon.
I'm so tired. I worked so hard on those signs, and then we had 80 people, which was good, but still, I mean, we had that gym filled with just precinct 1 last time, you know.
And there was like nobody.
The new precinct 1, yeah.
Well, it's a few minutes after 7 o'clock, so let's go ahead and call the Johnson City Council meeting number 22-03 to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cope,
Here.
Evans,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Ready,
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
I want to welcome everyone that is in the audience with us this evening. If you are here for an item that is on the agenda, we would ask for you to wait for that item to come up to address the council. If you're here for an item that is not on the agenda, there is an opportunity of your public communications, which will be coming up here shortly, that you'll be able to address the council. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. And since we have a couple of officers in the room with us this evening, why don't you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Jim, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes this evening.
Council, any changes?
None.
Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to public communications, we have a couple of proclamations this evening under public communications. The first, a proclamation proclaiming February as Black History Month in the city of Johnston. And I don't think we have anybody here to receive this proclamation this evening, but because it's a pretty significant proclamation, I am going to go ahead and read it. Whereas each year, Black History Month is observed in February. And whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development to help build this great nation. And whereas observing Black History Month provides opportunities to gain a deeper understanding of African American history and to acknowledge the centuries of struggles for equality and freedom. And whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our attention to the continued need to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals. And whereas every year a national theme is chosen for Black History Month to focus attention on a particular aspect of Black culture and experience. This year's theme is Black Health and Wellness. The theme was chosen to celebrate the contributions and breakthroughs of Black medical professionals and workers, and to recognize the cultural richness of non-traditional health and wellness practitioners in the Black community. And whereas the City of Johnston takes pride in the diversity of our community and honors organizations, individuals, and families of African American descent in appreciation of their invaluable contributions that enrich the history and culture of our city while continuing to unite and sustain us as a community. And whereas our community continues to work toward becoming an inclusive community in which all residents, past, present, and future, are respected and recognized for their contributions to our community, state, country, and world. And whereas the City of Johnston is proud to honor the history and contributions of African Americans in our community throughout our state and nation. Now therefore, I, Paula Dierenfeld, Mayor of the City of Johnston, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month. I encourage all Johnston residents to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and create a more peaceful, inclusive, and prosperous world for all. And I'll sign this and give it to Cindy to sign as well, and we'll post it on the website. Very good. What's that? Should we have a picture?
Sure, why not?
I'm always up for a picture, especially when I wear a Johnston shirt.
I'm not wearing the official color today. By one time that you pointed out that I'm not wearing
I know,
black.
well, this is coming back.
I got your black one.
Somebody's.
One thing that I didn't know until I started reading a little bit about Black History Month was that February is chosen because it coincides with the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass.
I thought Abraham Lincoln declared the emancipation thing this month, right?
In February as well.
Yes, that's right.
I would just encourage all of you to go out and read about some of the African Americans in our history during this month or every month. I recently read a little bit about Prince, and I didn't grow up with Prince, and so I had no appreciation for Prince. But I'll tell you what, that guy was a really, really talented guy. So I've suddenly developed a lot of appreciation for Prince. That's what you do in retirement.
Or work on airport funding memos.
We do have another proclamation this evening, and that is a proclamation proclaiming February 15th, 2022 as School Resource Officer Appreciation Day in the City of Johnston. And I'll read this one, and we do have a couple of officers with us this evening to receive it. School Officer Appreciation Day Proclamation, School Resource Officer Appreciation Day Proclamation. Whereas the National Association of School Resource Officers and the Johnston Police Department are dedicated to making schools and children safer by providing the highest quality training to school-based law enforcement officers. And whereas school resource officers within the Johnston Community School District bridge gaps between youth and law enforcement and embrace a triad concept of school policing, serving in informal counseling, education, and law enforcement roles in supporting students and communities they serve. And whereas by training law enforcement officers to counsel, educate, and protect school communities, the men and women in blue promote a positive image of law enforcement to school children and school communities. And whereas SRO programs across the globe are founded as collaborative efforts by police agencies, law enforcement officers, educators, students, parents, and communities to create safe learning environments, provide valuable resources to school staff members, foster positive relationships with students, and develop strategies to resolve problems that affect youth with the goal of protecting all children so that they can reach their fullest potential. And whereas Johnston School Resource Officers are valuable and essential members of the education community and deserve unwavering respect and support from the public in the pursuit of keeping schools and students safe. As a counselor and mentor, the SROs impact the lives of our future generation and ensure the staff's safety through ALICE training. And whereas, now therefore, the National Association of School Resource Officers and I, Paula Dierenfeld, Mayor of the City of Johnston, do hereby proclaim February 15, 2022 as School Resource Officer Appreciation Day. And I will ask our officers in the room to come forward and receive this proclamation. Before you slip away, why don't you introduce yourselves?
And
Those
actually,
that don't know who you are.
Mayor, I think it would be possible for us to do a group picture on this one as well.
Sure, absolutely. Let's
Do
have
the
it.
introductions
Yeah.
first.
Introduce yourselves for those that don't know you.
Yeah, I'm the police chief. So this is Adam Criswell. He's actually here just for security purposes, but he's served in an interim capacity as school resource officer over the course of his career. So it's fitting that he'd be here tonight as well. And then we have Sergeant Granny, who's our community policing sergeant, who's the one that leads and supervises the school resource officer program as well as our community outreach, which obviously we know goes hand in hand with the families that we serve. And with that, we've also served in the sort of prior promotion and still does in the end.
And our other SRO?
Shane Moonlabong is one that he's just been activated for military service, so he's unable to be here tonight. And then Officer Dan Steck is the other one who's unable to be here tonight.
Well, I read the proclamation, but I can tell you that I, as well as the rest of the community, appreciate what you do in our schools. I mean, we are confident that our schools are safe. We have a presence there every day through our SROs. We live in a world these days that are a little scary at times, and unfortunately, some of those scary situations happen in our schools. Where our children go to learn, and then they find themselves in difficult situations. However, we know that because you're there, you have a presence there. That somebody's keeping an eye on what's going on and protecting them to the extent that we can. So, and besides that, not only do you provide safety to them, but you're like walking gods over there with those kids. I mean, you build those relationships with our kids at a very early age, and that is just so important that they understand what our police officers do for them, and they respect them for that, and it impacts them for the rest of their lives. So thank you for doing that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. You got it.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, we are still under public communications. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? Don't see anybody in the room. Do we have anybody online? Okay, we'll move on then. We do not have any scheduled public hearings this evening, so we'll move to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Then vote, please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Redding,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to the non-consent agenda, item 7A, consider resolution number 22-37, a resolution approving the site plan for the Flooring Guys at 4925 Northwest Johnson Drive, PZ case 2132. Clayton.
Good evening. The Flooring Guys have submitted a site plan for the development of a 20,000 square foot office warehouse showroom facility located at the corner of Northwest Johnston Drive and Northwest Beaver Drive, the northwest quadrant there. The property is on our comprehensive plan as industrial future land use, and it is currently zoned M2 general industrial, and the proposed use would be consistent with that zoning district and the comprehensive plan future land use designation. Couple items of specific note on this site. There is a landscape buffer requirement along the southeastern portion adjoining across from the Casey's General Store, which is currently zoned C2. So our current zoning code would require half a 30-foot landscape buffer there. The applicant has requested that buffer be waived in recognition of the right-of-way separating it, and also in recognition that with our zoning code update that we're going through, this would be an area that in the future we typically would not require a buffer. And they do have some conflicts with utilities down there. So that is a request to waive that buffer in that southeast quadrant. They are meeting all their open space landscaping requirements and in fact actually exceeding those with the exception of needing to put a few additional shrubs on the site. Traffic access to the site is via two access points. And Cindy, I don't know if you want to pull up the site plan so people can see it. The eastern access would be restricted for passenger vehicles, and then the western access would be for semi-traffic. The intent there is to try and pull those semi-traffics further away from the intersection at Beaver Drive to allow for better turning movements. The spacing doesn't meet our standard requirements. It's a little closer than they should be between the All-Star Concrete and that semi-traffic one. I think it's like 15 feet short. So staff is recommending that that is acceptable to allow for that. They are meeting all their parking requirements for the site, and they are installing sidewalk from the intersection at Beaver Drive along the north side of Johnson Drive to their eastern access. And then they are requesting that the remainder of the sidewalk from that eastern driveway to their west property boundary be deferred until otherwise directed by council. And that would be consistent with requests from All-Star Concrete and ACO Unlimited to the west there. That's a rural section roadway with an open ditch there, so drainage makes it difficult to get sidewalk fully down there. And we would retain the ability that we could require sidewalk in the future if needed on all three sites to get us back over to the trail. But we would at least be getting it from the existing sidewalk on Beaver to this building. There'd at least be a dedicated pedestrian access. Property would be supplied with all city utilities, water, sewer, storm, and have adequate fire protection. Stormwater management would be a combination of a small dry bottom detention basin in that southeast corner and underground detention cells along the southern property boundary. And finally, on architecture, as an industrial building, we do require 25% of the sides facing the road be brick, stone, architectural concrete panel, architectural steel, or textured concrete block. They are meeting those requirements on both the south and east with the use of stone panels. And Cindy pulled up the elevations there for you to look at. That is a real quick rundown of the site. Happy to go into further details needed, answer questions. And we do have representatives of the applicant. If you have questions of them, Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended approval.
Council have any questions for Clayton?
I do, Clayton. I understand that this is a rural road section, and that is why we are deferring the sidewalk on the south side, which would be the north side of Johnston Drive. Where does our trail along Johnston Drive connect to Murrell Hay? I'm not making myself very well clear tonight, but as you go west toward Murrell Hay Road, the trail is on the north side.
So there's the trail crossing kind of at the midpoint between Beaver Drive and Murrell Hay Road right now, at Prairie Point Crossing.
Yep,
On the north side there, they're constructing the apartment complex
Yep.
currently.
right.
We will be extending trail west on the north side there, all the way to Murrell Hay Road.
But do we have any plans for a connection from that very great trail to the east along Johnson Drive, either on the north side of Johnson Drive or the south side of Johnson Drive?
At this time, no.
Hmm.
I don't know if maybe John could comment on that. I don't know if he's looked at that by chance.
Okay.
When is that west sidewalk?
The portions of it should start to go in later this year, and I think we're actually hoping to have it wrapped up by the end of the year, all the way to Murrell Hay Road, because the east half of it is getting constructed by the apartment complex, and then the west half is getting constructed as part of our intersection improvements of Murrell Hay Road and Johnston Drive.
Echo, they're ready to go when we say. And then the Pantry guys, they're ready to go when we say. And then all we have left is this piece.
I don't know if I would categorize it as they're ready to go, but they would be required to go when we say. And they'd be required at 5-foot sidewalk, not 10-foot trail.
Yeah, I guess to me, the concept is you allow a sidewalk to be deferred until development all occurs. It appears at this point, development will have fully occurred. So why continue to defer the sidewalk?
It certainly is, if council feels it's warranted at this time, I think what you would do is, we don't defer it on this site, and then we need to go back and require All-Star Concrete and
Right.
ACO to make those improvements.
I'm wondering though, since we have the trail going west, if it makes sense to extend it east. And I know that would be a huge project because of the terrain there. But is that something that our Trails Committee should be taking a look at? Rather than putting in a sidewalk now with, limited use, if it makes more sense to put a trail in the future, maybe start working towards that, in that direction.
It actually was proposed by the Trails Committee to be trail all the way to Beaver Drive through there.
We certainly don't have it in our CIP yet, right?
We do not.
Yeah, so that's something that we would have to incorporate into our CIP, but
Would that be on the north side or south side, John?
North side.
That'd be on this side.
We have had at least preliminary discussions with Chris Christensen about that.
So are you saying, Mayor, that basically to continue the deferment for those three properties,
Right.
but with the intention being that we need to be looking to put that in our CIP, to put the trail in? The three property owners in essence would pay half the cost of the trail because it's is that how that works, or?
They'd pay the cost equivalent of a 5-foot sidewalk.
Right.
And we would pay the upsize.
Right.
So what are we doing to the west? Trail or side?
Trail, 10-foot trail.
I mean, that would make a great connection from Murrell Hay to Beaver. So rather than waste the money to put the sidewalk in now, rip it out to put a trail in the future. And in fact, if you put a sidewalk in now, it might even delay installation of a trail. So just
Yeah,
start making some
I'm
plans to move in
fine
that
with
direction.
that, but I do think we need to be looking to put that, that this deferment shouldn't happen forever. It
Right.
needs to be
Right.
included in a CIP in the near future. And it sounds like if the Trails Committee has identified it, then that should help to get that done, so.
The resolution as drafted, you retain the ability to require that. So you're not giving anything up there.
But there's a fair amount of infrastructure being put into these ditches, these culverts, et cetera. Ditches where there isn't a ditch now, right?
There is a ditch.
but it's not as deep as this, I wouldn't think. Anyway, I guess I'm kind of curious if we are going to save money by saying that this trail is going to happen, you know, is this going to be an expensive amount of construction for a non-sidewalk and we're going to turn around and put a trail in pretty quick? I don't know how quick. It's a question I have. Are we wasting money too? You know, are we requiring the owner to put in a lot of infrastructure that's going to be not necessary because there'll be a trail?
I'd maybe look to the applicant's representative on what sort of improvements are happening in that ditch section and what impacts that may have on the property owner. I don't know if maybe you can comment on that, Vic.
Pull up the grading plan, I think it's sheet 3. Vic Pedgety with Associate Engineering Company of Iowa, 1830 Southeast Princeton Drive, Grimes, Suite M. For us to put a sidewalk in there, we're gonna have to pipe that, and you don't have curb and gutter in the street, so we have to control your runoff coming into the ditch then, so we'll be putting in, you know, probably another $100,000, and we're at our budget right now. We can't, I mean, that underground detention to meet the requirements the city has, and, you know, most cities have, is $300,000 in itself. And if we're at to go in there and put in more storm pipe and intakes along the road there to control the runoff so we could put a sidewalk in, it's a pretty good amount of money on our part. We'd have to pipe the whole ditch then. And there's the ditch, and one of those pipes is full of dirt that comes off the city storm sewer there. And you kind of think you can see it right now. That's why the ditch looks more extreme now, is because the pipes are buried in dirt coming into under the existing driveway into the site on the east. But it would just be really expensive on our part to have to pipe and put the intakes in to control the runoff from the street.
So based on what you just said, what I'm understanding is that in the future, if we do sidewalk or trail along there, it's going to be a pretty complicated project and costly.
Yeah, you'll need to probably put curb and gutter in on the street.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we have to plan for, and we'll have to build into our budget.
And at that time, let's just say it's 5 years from now or 8 years from now, and this project has been built the way it's designed. Now we're going to put a trail in. They would be required to compensate the city for 5 foot of concrete. But they wouldn't be required to put in the infrastructure, the pipe, you know, the curb, the road curb, the piping, because we now have to get rid of the ditch. We have to pipe all that water. That wouldn't be also as their cost. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand. In the future, that when we have these kind of issues, the city takes responsibility for all of that and only requests the payback of concrete sidewalk?
What did we do on Beaver Drive?
Beaver Drive was open ditches, so we just had to put the culvert in. What we'll more than likely do with our intersection project, we are expanding the road to 3 lanes. And with the development, with the Wood Cooper development, as well as this developing out, we'll more than likely have to put in our CIP to make this road improvement, which will then require storm sewer at that point in time. Along with that trail, it's not currently in our CIP, so it's probably at least 5 years out at a minimum. But we would probably take that road 3 lanes from where our intersection project ends there, probably right in that crossroads Wood Cooper development all the way to Beaver Drive.
So would that be the time to put the trail in?
Pat, going to Councilmember Martin's question, do you know, would the developer here be responsible for just the cost of the sidewalk, or would it also include the improvements within the right of way, such as piping, if they had to do it now?
If they did it now, my fear is that it may be put in the wrong spot because we don't have any design elevations of the road or what that ditch would look like if that road goes up or down. So if they were to put that infrastructure in now, it may be throwaway in the future.
Okay.
So with the drawings and the elevations as depicted here, would that be, is it set up to accommodate a 10-foot trail? Is there enough room for that?
Because there's a ditch in the right of way, so we'd have to fill in that entire ditch and put storm sewer along that whole section.
But what I heard Matt say is that we have plans to reconstruct this road in the future anyway.
Not currently in our CIP,
Right,
but it would be.
right.
We'll need to reconstruct that road in the future. At that point in time, we would, either we can get an additional easement now with the plat that would allow that trail. We could get a 5-foot trail easement currently off the plat so that we can get the trail through there. I think, Councilmember Cope, is that what you were alluding to make sure that we had enough room to get the trail in there in the future? Otherwise, we'd have to go back to the property owner in the future and acquire that through either easement or right of way at that point in time.
Well, it might be smart to do that because there's, a dozen trees along
Great.
there that let's say this happens in 8 years, we're gonna have to take all those trees out and just throw them away.
Yeah, we don't know if there's additional right-of-way needs along there since we don't have a roadway design.
We could get a quick and dirty right of way need based on the line work that we have on the intersection project, though. I can get that. I can't give it to you tonight, but we could get that. And I could share that with Clayton on what we would need on this, in this area. Over the
Sounds
next
like-
couple of days.
I know you can't figure everything out for the future, because who knows what. But if we were to then advise the builder that there's gonna be this easement for a trail, therefore, and it's so many feet and elevations are gonna be pretty good, then they could maybe put the landscaping outside of it. Is that what we're talking about?
To like a 5-foot easement into the property to allow for future trail construction. I think the most I'd do is maybe just push the landscaping back a few feet.
Absolutely not, you're fine with it, or absolutely not? No, I was.
It sounds as if they're agreeable with it.
Is there a fence along both Beaver and Johnston Drive? I see a note about a 4-foot vinyl fence.
It's up along Beaver there because of the slope of the hill coming down. Is that got 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 slope, and it comes right off the sidewalk. So we put a fence along the property line instead of railing on the sidewalk. I think is what they were asking for.
Yeah,
something like
that's
that.
for fall hazard.
Is it really that steep, Clayton, that they have to have a fence that looks steep? Yeah.
It is.
Would shrubs be an alternate choice?
I don't believe so.
No.
It has to
That'd
be
a
a fence.
liability.
Fence is expensive and not so great looking. But it's only along Northwest Beaver Drive.
Correct.
I think it's that northeastern portion where it's the steepest.
It goes all the way down to the. I think it's on the down
Yeah,
next sheet. I think.
there it is.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Might go all the way.
Can someone point out where that fence would go? I'm not sure I see it depicted all along Beaver.
It goes all the way around the sidewalk.
And
It's a 4-foot black vinyl fence,
Did you see?
chain
through?
link fence.
Yeah.
Because it's in the, you don't want to obstruct the view from the street there.
Is the trail gonna travel up that side, John? No. So that would be sidewalk.
currently sidewalk and is likely to remain sidewalk.
I only have one more comment, and it's about the landscaping. I love the diversity of the landscaping you've shown, but you have kind of shown the landscaping as one crab, one red bud, one evergreen, one crab, one red bud, one evergreen. I would recommend that maybe it's 3 of something together, then something, it doesn't have to, I love diversity, but the diversity doesn't have to be for every single tree. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Supposed to be 20% of one species.
Right, but maybe 4 or 5 together will make a more attractive landscape than one of everything all in a row. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Mayor, I have one other comment, just as proposed right now, then we are, the plan is to give, or really for them to actually pave some sort of sidewalk connecting and then going to that first entrance. That's what I heard you say, right, Clayton?
Correct.
Because I'm not sure that necessarily gains us anything. It would be throwaway, in my opinion, or at least in my impression of this conversation, when a 10-foot wide trail comes in. Is there any need for any sidewalk greater than what's currently in place on Beaver for them? I mean, I defer really to the business owner and property owner more than anything if they anticipate they're going to need that pedestrian mode, or if we have some sort of city ordinance that requires us to have that pedestrian entrance to their facility. But otherwise, I'd rather not have to waste any money of anyone's. And let's get that trail in sooner rather than later. And I realize that still sooner is 5 years in a CIP.
Yeah, we don't have a very specific code provision that says it must be there. We do have some vague language within our zoning code talking about pedestrian connections. And over the past few years, we really have been pushing developers to provide those pedestrian connections, to provide that alternative means of transportation. Again, I would defer to the property owner as well. They know their business best, how their clients are arriving. But with this small connection, what it does do is it does provide a dedicated pedestrian path, at least from Beaver to this first business. But I would defer to property owner and council on if they feel it's warranted.
Do we have an estimate of even what that distance is from where they'll have to connect at that corner on Beaver and Johnston to the first turn in?
This building,
200,
so we're like a
300 feet.
Councilman Burkhart, I would just say that since I've been on the council, I have been part of the driving the sidewalk. People need to have a sidewalk to get to the doorway. I've been driving some of that. And we don't know when we're going to get this trail put in. It's going to be 5 years. Maybe we could find some money in 3. I would recommend that we at least keep the sidewalks. We're trying to be a walkable neighborhood.
Yes, I value that very much. And in most situations I do as well. I'm also not trying to encumber the property owner beyond what we're going to do, especially if we can accelerate a trail to that east. So,
But not building that sidewalk doesn't accelerate the trail.
no, but at the same point, they're going to have to pay us again for 5 feet.
Not that part. Since they put in a sidewalk, if we change that corner, I think it'd be all on our dime.
They would receive credit for that portion of it.
Even more reason, in my opinion, to balance that.
It's kind of a, I think the balance act there is connectivity. I think you're losing some connectivity there. So I think the small amount of money that they're getting credited for that is worth having the connectivity.
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? If not, do we have a resolution to approve, or do we have a motion to approve resolution number 22-37?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Ask one question. Did you want to require dedication of an easement for a trail? That's currently not in this resolution. So whether or not you want to require
Sounds like
that,
they were
or
agreeable to it.
we can work out those details if you're fine with that.
That
Okay.
part of the, does that need to be part of the resolution?
I don't know if it's critical, but I just wanted to check with you if you felt it was critical or not.
I think it'd probably be good to memorialize that, so we could amend the motion to include the,
Grant a 5-foot easement for future trail construction.
so noted.
So who made the motion? Okay, you amended it.
One quick thing, let me do a quick calculation over the next couple of days to make sure that 5 feet is enough before we limit it to 5 feet. If we just say that they're willing to give a trail easement, we'll keep it to a minimum. I just don't want to
Right.
hinder ourselves.
Who seconded the motion?
I did.
Are you agreeable to the amendment?
I am.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Reddy,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7B, thank you, gentlemen. You bet. Item 7B, consider resolution number 22-38, accepting the acquisition of real estate interests and authorizing payments to acquire such real property for the Murrell Hay Road Gateway Corridor Redevelopment Project. Oh,
Chair there, Adam.
Good evening, council. Have for your consideration a purchase agreement for 5229 Murrell Hay Road. Cindy, if you could pull up 5229 vicinity map there, just for reference. The purchase agreement, proposed purchase agreement is the amount of $825,000. The anticipated closing date on this would be end of this month through March 11th. The property owner has provided a phase 1 environmental report on the property. No significant issues were identified as part of that. They've also provided a prior purchase agreement that was executed by a proposed buyer in excess of $825,000. Purchase agreement includes a $25,000 non-refundable due diligence payment that has been made. So the remaining balance would be $800,000 if executed by the city council. Purpose of this acquisition would be to square off the existing city acquisitions. 55 extends further east off the map here, and 5249, which was acquired by the city about 10 years ago. The intended purpose is to redevelop these three properties in alignment with the gateway use. Happy to answer.
any questions? If not, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 22-38?
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Reddy.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7C, consider approval of claims in the amount of $905,642.37.
I move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Reddy,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Motion passed. Should we go back to the items that we didn't get to on the work session?
We can do that. So the second item related to our discussion on issues that we need to address as we continue our work on the FY23 budget is the climate action initiatives and goals for the city of Johnston. Councilmember Martin prepared a memo that was sent to the city council outlining some steps and actions that the city should consider in trying to address climate initiatives. And I'll go ahead and let Councilmember Martin go ahead and give any additional information on your proposal?
I guess that I am asking for the council to consider these initiatives. I think that we in Johnston are known for, at least we were known for, being forward-thinking in terms of innovation, in terms of neighborhoods like the Pioneer Parkway, Green Meadows area development. When I've recently been reelected, and when I talk to people, a lot of the things that that get talked about with me is the appreciation of our parks, appreciation of Beaver Creek, concern that we're moving too fast and getting rid of a lot of our lovely landscape, our trees, et cetera. There's concern out there that we need to be addressing the future for our children, doing what we can to have clean water, access to water. Anyway, I think I laid out for you guys my thoughts. Some of these things are low-hanging fruits. When I say that we should be doing the 900 trees a year planting, it doesn't mean that we have to go out and buy a $250 tree. We can get tree seedlings from the Iowa State Nursery or Forestry Nursery for $1 a piece, 80 cents even. I do think that that makes them too small really to go right out and be planted. I think that we have what used to be Rennis's greenhouse. We could pot those little seedlings up and grow them for a couple years and then plant something that's 3 or 4 feet tall. We could offer these seedlings to businesses, churches, the school. So I'm not saying that 900 trees is going to be I think that it's achievable is what I'm trying to say. I'm doing a poor job of it. Other things I'd like us to investigate what it would cost to buy some hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles. I absolutely realize that the ladder truck can't be an electric vehicle, but there could be some smaller pickups, other cars, vehicles that could be that. I think the biggest thing that I would ask this group of people to consider, seriously consider, is having a sustainability director or coordinator. As I stated in my note to the council, it's been done in several other cities. One of them is Ames and Iowa State share a sustainability director. And the advantages to having a sustainability director or coordinator is having someone who is focused on the issues that we're all talking about. How can we reduce our carbon emissions? How can we address climate warming? There's a lot of programs out there that we're already doing, but people don't know we're doing it because they haven't heard about it. And what Janet does in terms of her videos and all her communication on Facebook and Twitter is great, but we still need someone that is actively focused on that. And I think we could either hire someone or we could share. And I know the city of Urbandale I've approached some of the city council members there and they're interested. A shared position because we have very similar populations, we have similar resources. We're sort of very similar in terms of our business community. I think if programs work in Johnston, they'll probably work in Urbandale. So that would be my priority right now, is for us to, over this next 12 months, have some thought about where we're going with climate change and what we're willing to do. Maybe ask staff in the next 12 months until the next budget to spend a little time looking at how much would it cost to get a sustainability coordinator? What would it cost for the Parks Department to start potting up 900 seedlings? How much would they have to invest in terms of watering and care, et cetera? That's what I'm asking for in the short term. And then in the long term, I'm hoping that we'll start checking off some of these things. Thank you.
Councilman Martin, I thought you did a great job putting this memo together. Obviously, a lot of thought went into it, and I think you've got a lot of great ideas here. Some of them, particularly those relating to the trees, are those items that maybe, has the tree board taken a look at those items? Would it be appropriate for them to make a recommendation to us?
Have they looked at those items? I do not, I'm trying to remember if I showed them this or not. I think I did not show them this memo. I think they could absolutely help with those items, like where we could do some more trees along major streets. How would it work to offer free or discounted trees to schools, churches, and businesses? Is there a way that the tree board could help with a program, provide, because they're very skilled people on the tree board.
Right.
They know how to plant a tree and they know what the right trees are to be selected. Perhaps they could offer their time also working with volunteer groups to do those plantings. The Johnston Climate Change Committee, which I'm also involved with, would also be a resource there. So absolutely, I think there are ways to continue to flesh out these ideas in terms of what the ask is in terms of resources.
Jim, you mentioned to me that you and David talked to a group earlier this week or
Yes,
last
so
week?
actually, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. We had received some information from the University of Northern Iowa, from the Center of Energy and Environmental Education, and they're doing a Resilient Iowa Communities program where they're working with Iowa communities to identify and share information on what we're all doing to address climate and energy issues. There's not a cost involved in that. It's just sharing information as we do projects and programs related to that. And then we also get information what other communities are doing as well. And so this is a low or no cost opportunity. It would take some staff time to participate, but it was an opportunity that they presented to us about a month or two ago, didn't they, David? And we met with them a couple weeks ago, and sounds like a good program. So I think it dovetails very well into what Councilmember Martin's talking about, and something that we could get involved with fairly easily. So we are looking at that. There is we were planning on sharing additional information with the council at an upcoming meeting. They have a resolution they would like for communities that want to participate to adopt, so that we can, just show our commitment. Do you have anything else you want to add about that, David? Yeah, you'll learn more about it because we'll have some information later, but it was just, like I said, in the last couple of weeks. We've learned about it a couple months ago, and we followed up with it within the last couple of weeks. So it looks like a good opportunity to sort of start some of the process of identifying what we can do and how we can better address energy and climate issues.
And I think just what you just said speaks to the need for maybe the thought of a focused sustainability coordinator or director. I mean, I know that your plate is full, and I know that David's plate is full. And I seriously think that having a person on staff 50% of the time, whatever it is, to look for grants and look for these programs and see how they work into what we're already doing would be a great advantage.
So a couple questions I've got about, because one thing to me, the sustainability coordinator and then the sort of the consultant that you have for the climate action, tracking with the UNI project, can that be coordinated into one role? To me, the sustainability, a fundamental element of sustainability is dealing with climate.
Right,
So-
exactly.
so
limited resources, limiting your carbon emissions. Yep.
So to me, I would feel more comfortable if they were rolled together.
So I think the greenhouse emission study that was offered by the University of Northern Iowa is still possible. And I think that happens, I can't remember the Metro group that has a staff person who's already going to take the information from cities, Like how many people
the-
live there and how many
Yeah.
cars that they drive, and, you know, what kind of businesses that they are, and what an average restaurant puts out in terms of uh, uh, oil or whatever. So that's different. I mean, we have a couple ways that that's gonna happen, that greenhouse emission study. Once that gets done, normally what the cities are doing is then going to a climate action plan, and that's in my proposal too. The thing is, if we don't have someone dedicated to driving these programs forward and looking for funding and saying, oh, I heard about this and I heard about that, and here's a program that works, it just falls down in terms of
No,
priorities.
I understand
Yeah.
that point, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, I mean, from my standpoint, for me, sort of kind of driving benchmarks would be, I'd like this, I'd rather this person not be a full-time city employee, even if it's just shared with multiple cities, because then you get into benefits and costs like that. I'd rather look at a consultant role as opposed to a
Oh, I
full-time city
see.
employee. I like it to be shared, as I've said to you many times for a long time. This is not something I think that Johnston should be doing independently. We should be sharing with Urbandale. And you kind of highlighted that. But I
Right.
think that would be true about the climate action plan or the sustainability. I think they could be shared.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that our two cities, Urbandale, and I believe the Urbandale City Council would be favorably looked
Yeah,
at.
so that, I mean, they're kind of a natural partner. So to me, if you kind of combined that into those things, and again, like I said, look at a consultant or look at figuring out, to me, that would raise my comfort level. I don't,
I see what you're saying. You're not comfortable with a full-time staff person, but someone that we hired contract or whatever.
yeah, something like that, I would be, as so to help us manage kind of that
Yep.
cost, so. And the other is, I'm also not a super big fan of the city getting into the electric charging vehicle business, because I think we're competing with the private sector.
The charging stations,
Yeah, because that's something that you're gonna see fuel stations do. Certainly, they're looking at that. So to me, I'm not a big fan of that, unless we are convinced that the private sector is not gonna get involved in that, so.
So Councilmember Martin, when I look at what you've proposed here, I don't see anything that immediately impacts our budget. So I think the question is, how do we move, what process do we put in place to have further discussion around the items that you've suggested here for our consideration? And I don't know that I don't know that we have a lot of ad hoc committees now. It's hard to get them all scheduled. I don't know that that's the direction we want to go, but I think we need to think about how we take your ideas here and have some further discussion about them.
I think that makes sense. I think that John could help a lot with, doing a little, maybe breaking these down and thinking about who should maybe start addressing these or looking for more input in terms of, again, what would be the cost? When could it be implemented? What does it look like? I'm not sure who would talk to perhaps the city of Urbandale to see if they're interested in this. I don't know that the city of Grimes would be interested. I don't think so, but
Couldn't we direct Jim to have that communication with?
I think that would be great.
He's looking at me.
What if we had another meeting on this in 6 months?
With following up on,
Following up on all these, breaking them down, looking at who could, speak to those issues, find out about competing with electric service providers, if I mean, if we try and target something in 6 months, I'd love to have another conversation about this so that the next time that we meet on budget for our next fiscal year, next December, we kind of have an idea of which one of these things are the low-hanging fruits that we can start.
Here's what I would suggest as a first step, Councilmember Martin. Maybe you and I sit down with staff and kind of talk through them, get an understanding of what the task might be involved in each of them, and maybe do some prioritization. And then figure out, how we move from there.
Right. I think that'd be great. I would like to know if the other city council members are in favor of these proposals, or saw this as an overreach, or the timeline is too short. I would appreciate if any other comments just in general, because I'd like to know if this is a favorable direction or not.
I totally agree with you with this proposal, but we need to know more details about how we can make this happen. So maybe the proposal you made 6 months from now, we'll meet and see how things are. In that time, we can have more details, and that will help us to clear the bed and more on how we're going to do this. Climate, of course, as you said, there's no plan B or no alternate planet for us. This is only one thing we have, so we need to work on that smaller stuff. Yes, we'll do that, but we need to be more diligent how we do this and more details.
Okay.
I think it's great. I think the dialogue that we've started, with the Climate Change Committee coming forward, but I'm very comfortable with the speed, and we think it through. We're very, meticulous on what we're doing, so that it's fits everybody. I'll tell you on personal experience, we looked into putting the charging station at the building. The cost was insane. It was like 30 grand for a plug-in. And we decided, well, actually, we had 160 employees in the building and nobody drove an electric car yet. So we just kind of put it on the table and we'll see, it'll catch up. It's coming.
Mhm.
But I think I appreciate the work you've done. I think we're on our way.
Okay, great.
So,
Councilmember Martin, I'm the only one who hasn't weighed in, and I never turn down an opportunity when someone asks for my opinion. I usually offer it without being asked. Frankly, I certainly appreciate all these ideas, and I stand behind you and all of these ideas. I also think that to some extent, the pace can't happen soon enough in some of these capacities. So the quicker we can get to the low-hanging fruit, I think it's outstanding. I'd love to know more even about some of these pointed things about talking about trees as infrastructure. I think that leverage to FEMA, while I hope, knock on something wood, that we don't have those disasters again impact our city. The reality is to be able to claim those is a fantastic leverage of federal funds, and certainly to benefit and keep our city getting even greener. So whatever we can do, and I look forward to these future conversations.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Just to note, I did send the council an email this afternoon. We received several comments on Councilmember Martin's proposal. And so just prior, at about 5 o'clock or so, I did send you these 6 or 7 emails we had received earlier today on the proposal.
Okay, well, more to come on that. Jim, the next item?
The next item relates to a program that the Metropolitan Planning Organization has organized, and it's called the Mid-Iowa Planning Alliance for Community Development. And basically, it's a program that they're wanting Metro or Central Iowa communities to participate in. When we talk about the Central Iowa area, we as a group of communities, we do not have currently a, I'm losing the term right now as I'm talking.
Council of Government.
council of government, right. We don't have that, and we're the only area in the state of Iowa that doesn't have a council of governments. And so in actuality, we did miss out on some grant funding, not we, Johnston. The region missed out on some grant funding related to the CARES Act late last year. So what they're doing is they're trying to organize a community or a council of governments for the communities to participate in, to have opportunities to look for grant funding, and what the MPO is planning on doing with the funding they're requesting from the communities. They would have a staff person that would lead the effort and coordinate the efforts of all the communities. The request is for 15 cent per capita funding from the communities. On an annual basis for us, that would actually be $3,610. But to get it started, since they want to start in April 2022, they're actually looking at a 15-month time frame for the first commitment, which would come out to $4,512. A relatively minor amount, especially if we're able to get success in applying for some of the grant funding. I noted in the staff report a number of services that this group would provide to the city. A lot of them we're already taking care of. For example, we're already working on our comprehensive plan, and we already did the comprehensive plan and zoning updates, but there's other advantages that we would get with this organization as well. So with that, this one does have a budgetary implication. Again, a relatively small amount of money that we can take out of some of our reserves, and it won't affect our property tax levy that we've already shared with the city council, and staff would recommend that we do participate in the program. I noted in the staff report as well a number of communities that have already signed on to participate, and there's actually some additional communities that have signed on since the staff report. I know that the city of Clive, the city of Waukee, city of Bondurant, and city of Pleasant Hill is actually taking action this week to participate. So a lot of participation for communities and counties within central Iowa.
Appears to offer a lot of potential for benefit for little cost. Is anybody concerned?
No, and I would voice support for it as well. One of the advantages I do think, and I have to, for full disclosure, our firm lobbies at the Capitol on behalf of the Trade Association for all the councils of governments across the state of Iowa. So I'm somewhat familiar with the work that they do. But I think the one advantage I think this does is it helps us develop relationships with folks. We do a lot of work with the cities and the kind of around Polk County. This has a lot of relationships with a lot of cities. Boone, Dallas, further down the road, and we have to work with those folks closely, especially on a lot of water quality kind of related issues. So I do think it would be a value. So I would support it as well.
Everybody else comfortable with it?
Yes.
Tim, historic preservation?
Yes, the last one that we've talked about, actually, this would be our second budget cycle. We've talked about the Historic Preservation Commission, and this really comes from our Historic Society in trying to organize a commission, which is really a branch of the government. It'd be like the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Park Board, the Tree Board, that would be appointed by the mayor and city council. Currently, our society, our Historic Society, is a volunteers, but it's not really related or involved with the city, although we're very closely with them on some projects. Creating a commission would allow whoever is involved in the commission to apply for grant funding to help preserve and protect some of our historical resources. And so the Historic Society has been very active and interested in having the city go ahead and create a council of local government for historic preservation with the community. The commitment that the state of Iowa requires is that there would be $750 a year towards the Historic Preservation Commission, that we would have a complete inventory of our historic resources, and that cost would be about $25,000 to $75,000, and then a commitment of up to 20% of our staff time. Staff did look at how other communities are managing this, and it really is all over the table from the standpoint that some communities give the bare minimum, $750, other communities give thousands of dollars to the Historic Preservation Commission. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. It just depends on how much the council would like to present to that. In some cases, for example, when you talk about staff people that are committed to the commission, the commission are self-supporting from the standpoint they have a volunteer do all their minutes and all the sort of the clerical things that they do. And I did talk with John Brown, who is the president of our Historical Society, and he's the one that has been a very strong advocate of organizing this group. And he told me that are very interested, that they would provide a staff person or a volunteer to do some of the clerical things. We would have to do some, but it won't be the 20% that was identified as the potential commitment. He's also checked with the state of Iowa, and they have already done some of the inventory for our historic assets in Johnston. They have been successful in the last several years in getting a student intern to work with the Historic Society, and they feel that using that intern plus the resources that they have with some of their members, they could do really a preliminary inventory of our historic resources with the idea that down the road, once they get organized, they could help do some fundraising, maybe get some grants to do a more involved inventory. So they have made a commitment to help in trying to make this a reality. And so I just wanted to bring it back up to the council. The last time we talked about it, it was suggested that staff talk with the society and see if there's, what they'd be willing to do to try to make this happen. So just that's the information I have, and just would like direction from the council if we want to work towards putting a historic commission together.
I think our group of volunteers over the past several years have worked very hard to organize, to meet, to do, different activities and events and projects that benefit our community. And they've done it, completely on their own volunteer time, and have, just done a great job. I think, for $750 and for the small commitment that we would have to make to them in terms of their supporting them, I think it's probably time to give them a little support for the work that they do for us.
Yeah, I'm comfortable, especially with the approach of the other meeting every other month and other steps of them taking the minutes to sort of limit. I do think I think we're all cognizant of trying to limit how many things we ask staff to do.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But this is a group that's been doing their.
No, I support that 100%. But I think
I'm just reinforcing what you said.
I think this is finding the right balance. Good.
Any other comments? $750.
Okay.
Yep.
Should be good.
Well, we'll work with them to begin the process, because this would be an ordinance to establish the commission and appointed by the mayor and city council. I'm going to suggest we start out with a low number of commission members, like 5, so we don't have a 9-member commission that we have to find a lot of volunteers for. We start out with a smaller group and grow that group as necessary. So, okay. Thank you. So those were the items that we had on the agenda on that item. The other one that we were going to talk about this evening was the commitment to the outside organizations, particularly the Partnership for a Healthy Community. I know Councilmember Burkhart did some research into that and provided us a document that suggests and justifies some additional support for the historic preservation, or excuse me, for the Partnership for a Healthy Community. And I'll let Councilmember Burkhart go ahead and report on that.
Thank you very much, Jim. I hope you all did get a chance to read through this memo. I find it always interesting, as I've indicated in past conversations, to get a data view of what Johnston is about, especially in the rich diversity, socioeconomically, that utilizes services that are offered within our community that perhaps some of us don't and are afforded opportunities not to have to use. One of the things I would point out, I know there were several questions that came up on our last discussion. Part of that discussion was The thoughts that the Johnston Partnership serves folks that are non-Johnston residents. In my memo, I do give indication of that, that they, a majority of the folks that receive food pantry services specifically from the Johnston Partnership are not Johnston residents. However, I do want to quickly point out that there are a significant amount, several hundred Johnston residents who utilized other food pantries within our community. And DMARC is part of that network. And there's multiple reasons for it. One of which, just like you and I may stop at a grocery store or a gas station nearer to where we work. By the way, over 50% of the folks who utilize the Johnston Partnership for Food Pantry are employed. The reality is that we may stop at a convenience store or a grocery store nearer to where we are out of convenience. This is also true for food pantries and food pantry participants, that they get their food from where they are. However, those numbers are unduplicated. So it isn't that the same Johnston person is utilizing other pantry services to gain more food or in some way to game a system. The other thing I want to point out, though, is the statistics give strong indication that this is not a social service handout that is routinely used. As stated, only 4.5% of all individuals use the Johnston Partnership 12 out of 12 months. Approximately half only used the pantry in 2021 1 or 2 times. This is an emergency pantry for folks. When they're down on their luck, when they can't make their ends meet, that's when they go to the pantry. And just as you or I would probably have some pride in what we do, and when we admit help from others, the reality is I don't at all deny the fact that there are probably Johnston residents who would not feel comfortable going to their community pantry and instead would go to a pantry outside of their city limits to receive that assistance. Having said that, I have no qualms in making sure that we support our community pantry to bolster the greater metro community. Part of that regional support and endeavor, just as the airport, just as Sec Taylor, just as those other things that we've discussed, not only tonight, but in the past. And certainly I'm grateful for all of those communities that support other food pantries in their own, quote, neck of the woods to help Johnston residents. I know there was a comment made too about not serving Johnston folks and it serving other folks, but I did get some information just today in an email from Andrea Cook, director of the Johnston Partnership, and I'd be happy to share her email. But one of the things she did point out specifically was that the Johnston Partnership offers a backpack program, the two that they call a Friday Friends and a Dragon Power program. That's only eligible to Johnston School District participants. You have to be within the Johnston School District and also have to be a student to receive that type of assistance. In 2021, 2022 so far, they're serving over 160 students per week at all of the elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools throughout our community. There is not a school that doesn't have students that are not receiving some of those. And in that 2021-22 service time thus far, they've served over 3,321 of those bags on that weekly basis, if you sum those up. So I feel like to a great extent, the Johnston Partnership is serving Johnston folks. I know that there has been concern too about they may be sitting on based on their latest 990 form. I know the mayor was quick to share that information, and I appreciate that because that actually incented some further conversation with Director Cook, that they have some significant assets in their bank account. And part of that discussion comes to her and the rationale of that they are trying to capacity build. They need to maintain and fund a vehicle, which they hadn't done before. They certainly are also trying to increase their staff and their hours of access. They're not a 24/7, they're not even a 40-hour-a-week type service at present. So since 2019, they've doubled their staff and their space, which included rent that they have to pay. They increased their open hours by 30%. They now have a vehicle that they need to maintain and utilize. And quite bluntly, as I talked about the consumer price index increase from a year ago, their expenses went from $18,000 a month on average at the end of 2019 to about $27,000 a month during last year. A large portion of that was due to food costs. And so as everything gets more expensive, it gets more expensive for those that provide service as well. My final comment would be, we're not out of the realm of doing things that other cities within the metro do. Councilmember Cope asked if I knew or had any information about what our neighboring communities do to support their social services, and specifically food pantry and personal care pantry. I sent out a request just today to follow up on that, and I've already received a variety of different responses, and those responses have varied greatly. City of Ankeny, for instance, provides no city funds at all for nonprofits, especially in the categories of social services, food pantry, personal care items. We moved to our neighbors in Urbandale. They've been name dropped quite a bit. Between their UCAN organization and their food pantry, over $80,000 in their current budget devoted to those two organizations, of which they're less than twice the size that we are. There are other organizations, including Clive, that gives city funds and contributions explicitly for rent to cover the space of the food pantry that occupies or exists within their organization. So if you'd like more information, and especially as I get more information on that, I'd be happy to continue to share that out. My request only went out this morning to those neighboring communities, and like I said, it's trickling in. I'm grateful that their staff has replied as quickly as they have, as I know our staff replies as quickly as they can too. Any questions? So as I summarize, I'm requesting for the full amount of $25,000, in part because that's what they asked, and I trust them to continue the diligent services that they already have provided to our community, that they commit to wanting to expand those services, and certainly because not only is food costing more, but also the social supports that are in place through federal and other state organizations is going away. Unemployment has been removed. The child care tax credit has already been removed. After this year, or after this month, excuse me, the emergency declaration for COVID relief funding gets retracted, and so folks go back to standard allocations of SNAP benefits. So combine those things together, I unfortunately predict that we're going to have more folks finding themselves in emergency and dire situations, and call upon the Johnston partnership to serve them. Anything else I can add?
Anybody have any questions for?
I think you put all the details very, I don't think it makes us feel that we should actually contribute. And you actually made a comment about you're giving the airport authority so much fun to build an airport. Why can't you just fund or just partnership for people? I totally agree with that. Thank you for that.
I think that you brought up some things I hadn't thought about, and I appreciate that. And I do support your advocacy of the Johnston partnership. And what I find fascinating is I'm looking at the heat map that you included, and that Camp Dodge has several people there who have used that address as their address for needing food or clothing, whatever. So even our hardworking military people make use of our food pantry. And that's a sad thing, and I'm here for supporting it.
Yeah, I would voice my support for funding it at the $25,000 level as well.
Teresa, you're still on, right?
I am. I just had to unmute, sorry.
You commented at our last meeting that we would take the funds out of our reserves.
I did comment about that.
Yeah, and that it would not affect our property tax rate.
It would not affect our property tax rate.
Okay, sounds
I
like
did
there's
comment. The only caution I want to make sure that this council is aware of, and I believe I've mentioned it to you before. I know I've at least mentioned it to the finance committee, And it's not specifically about the partnership, but encompasses all nonprofits, is that the state auditor has issued us guidance, and I mean all cities and counties, guidance and directives that we're not to use public funds for nonprofits. And specifically at our Iowa League of Cities budget workshop in December, we were informed that we would receive a copy of the state auditor's opinion on that issue. I have received it. I used it in December and January, actually, to ask the partnership for an invoice for their services to justify our $15,000 contribution to them. A number of cities have went so far as to start creating 28E agreements with these nonprofit groups. Some cities have actually had attorneys draft contracts with these cities or with these groups. I had the council revise our public purpose resolution back in, I believe, maybe May or June, after we heard the auditors at our Iowa Governmental Roundtable training. And then after he spoke again and we received the information that I received in December, I went so far as to ask the partnership for an actual invoice for what we were paying them for. So our auditors did not bring it up in this past audit. They would have been at the Iowa Governmental Roundtable discussion, just like I was. So I am assuming and moving forward with the path that our modified resolution and my instructions that I need an invoice as to the services we're providing. I'll ask for an invoice to the school district. I'm going to have to ask for an invoice to the Arts Council. The economic development issues are different because we do a resolution for those, but FYI, just know that it is a state auditor issue that he disagrees with, according to the Code of Iowa, that we should not be giving funds to nonprofit agencies.
It's one that we need to pay attention to and probably need to have that conversation with our new attorneys when they get on board.
That would be a great idea, but I just wanted to make sure that I at least brought it up again in a public meeting.
Yeah. So you mentioned the schools. It seems to me they would be another governmental entity.
Yeah, and I honestly.
Do we have a 28E with them?
And we do have a 28E with them.
Okay.
And they actually give us a budget that shows what we do pay for from them. So that's what I will use versus them just saying, it used to be the partnership would just send me an email and say, can I have this year's contribution for $15,000? Now I can't just do it that way.
Right.
That's what the school used to do as well. I'll probably talk to, I think the new gentleman's name is Scott.
Yep.
And just get just a little bit more coverage, I guess, is all I'm saying.
Well, it sounds like you're doing what we need to be doing at this point, and I think we just need to give it some more attention and like I said, talk to our attorneys once we get them on board, make sure that we're doing what we need to do to make that, keep the auditors happy.
Right.
Okay, Jim, any?
Yeah, I would like to point out one other thing. Cindy's got the chart up on the screen, as was requested at the last council meeting, and staff did go back and look at what our past history of providing funding for our organizations, our partner organizations that we do, and basically went back 15 years and up into the request that they made for FY23. We'll share this as well when we go to make our final decisions on the contributions to the different groups. But I thought it was interesting information. It certainly shows, in some cases, very long history of, not raising funds to the organizations. And I think, we'd say all these organizations are deserving of support, but at least this gives you some history of what we've been doing. And again, we'll continue to provide this information just for council's review as we continue to talk about our support of these organizations.
And what did we settle on for the Greater Des Moines Partnership then? Was it 7,500? Was that what we were talking about?
Yes, we talked about 7,500 for the Greater Des Moines Partnership, maintaining the level for the chamber. As the mayor mentioned, we have a 2080 agreement with the school district, which sort of dictates the amount that we have there. JEDCO, maintaining the level. We know they're going through a transition right now. And then, of course, now we've talked this evening about a $10,000 increase for the Partnership for a Healthy Community.
And I see here on this list, the Johnston Arts Council, $500 and $250. Are we going to talk about that? I would support talking about it as long as it's done in a very brief fashion.
Their request was, and that's just to do a couple of programs, primarily around Green Days, and they do a lot. They've been very active. Actually, all the community events we've had, they've been showing up and having activities for the children, and so the $500 supports their arts program, and again related to, I think, a cultural event at Green Days, as well as doing the paintings that were displayed at Terra Park, which were very popular. What they also asked for was funding to support 2 pieces of public art on the town center, and we haven't proposed that be done at this point in time. That was a $40,000, so we're going back to really just a couple of programs they provide in support of arts in our community.
I would support that. Sounds good.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Does that take care of all of those items then, Jim?
It does for our work session items, yes.
Okay, well, let's go back. I think all we had left on the regular meeting agenda was just the city council comments and staff comments. So why don't we start with staff comments?
Yes, I had 3 things I wanted to mention to the council this evening. The end of January is when the bow hunt program finishes for the season. I'm proud to say that we had another season that was safe. We didn't have any reported incidents related to our hunters. Actually, 15 deer were taken during this season. So I think it's helpful for you to know that it's not like there's hundreds or thousands of deer being taken, but the responsible hunters that did go through the process, they did take 15 deer in Johnston this past year. That doesn't include what Camp Dodge takes, which they're sort of on their own, and I think they're usually a lot higher than us. But anyway, they don't participate in the urban hunt, but
They have a need for more practice.
that's exactly right. You're going to get a doodle poll invite or doodle poll in the next couple of days. We are, as you may recall, the Johnston Crimes Fire Department had we hired a consultant. Actually, 50% of the consultant fees was paid from Johnson, 50% from Grimes. And the group that we hired was Emergency Services Consulting International. And the purpose of the study was to take a look at how our relationship is working and what we can do to further our relationship that we have with Grimes and sharing our fire services. And so they've got a report that's about 90% complete, and they want to share it with the city councils. They're going to share it with the fire board first and then come to the city councils. But we're going to try to pick a date where the Grimes and Johnston City Council are going to have a joint meeting and get the report from the group that has done the report for us. So we're looking at dates after spring break through April. So there'll be about several dates. We're thinking about a 2-hour time frame, probably, 6 to 8 o'clock in the evening, but it'll be a joint meeting with the Grimes City Council. So you'll get that in the next couple days. And then the last thing I wanted to mention this evening, I did get a call last week from Ted Corrigan, who is the director of Des Moines Waterworks. And so we're all aware of the effort to try to create more of a regional water system within the metro area. Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Urbandale, who are the primary groups that have resources and assets to produce water, have been working together to try to come to an agreement of how some of those assets would be utilized. All three of the boards have now approved the idea of moving forward with the regional water. And actually, all of the board members represented in those three boards voted unanimously at the end of the day to support this. And so what happens now is that they're going to try to get a critical mass of the communities, including Johnston, to also be on board. They're going to make a request for us to pass a resolution indicating our interest in doing regional water. I know I don't have a lot of detail at this point in time, but I will be sharing that in the future. I'm just letting you know, in case you've heard it from others, that this is moving forward, at least having the continued conversations with all the communities that would be involved. The next step, once communities, they get a good group of the communities that are supportive of it, there will be a 28E agreement that will be established. They feel it's going to be a very long, complicated agreement, and it'll probably take the good part of 2022 to put that together. We'll certainly be a part of that process and working with them all along to continue to work on this item. So again, there's a lot of moving pieces with this, but it does appear that at least the providers of the water, the groups that have the most assets related to this, have now agreed that we need to continue working on this project, and we will be a part of that going forward. So just wanted to give you an update there, and we'll certainly report back as meetings are held and we get more information about the details.
And I think we just need to be aware that likely if this goes fully into fruition, and I think it's a good thing, but that how we purchase water is likely to change, and it's going to require us to probably have to make a pretty sizable potential investment in this system. And so it will be important. I know Matt Stoffel, who does the work for the city, also does a lot of the work for us to start planning for how we figure out how to handle that. And I presume so just maybe direct that to Teresa to figure, we know, so we can fully anticipate if we go down this path, what all the implications are financially.
And that's a good point. As I mentioned, the three water boards that have assets are Urbandale, West Des Moines, and Des Moines. And so we don't have assets. We have distribution of water once it comes to us. We pay Des Moines Waterworks for the water that we use. And so as a part of that financial working out all this, we have to figure out how we share in those assets for all the other communities that don't have assets right now. But the ones that do have assets, they get consideration for the investments they've made into those. So yes, there will be a lot of conversation about how this all works out financially. But I think for one of the things we talk about is, right now as we have different water groups that are providing water service, who's going to invest to make sure that we can meet the growing needs of the region. And that's really what a lot of this is about, to make sure that we can have good potable water for all the communities in central Iowa, and having enough quantity and quality of water to address that. So yes, there will be a lot more information on that, and we'll be sure to share information as we go along. I think the first thing we'll probably see is a resolution just indicating our intent or desire to participate in the process.
Councilman Cope, I do know that Matt and I have talked about this several times. It is right on our, I guess, the forefront of our agenda. But that's one of the reasons we only set a water rate for 1 year. So we knew that things would be changing. So we're watching and we'll see what happens here.
Great, thanks.
Anything else, Jim?
That's all I had this evening.
Anything else from staff? Councilmember Evans? Councilmember Redding? Nicole?
I'll pass.
Mayor, I'll try to keep it brief. I have two items. The first is a public thanks.
It's just your council, your colleagues that will get it.
I know they will,
Yeah.
and I think my candy's already been picked through, so I can't even bribe them with their favorites. The first of which is, I do want to take a point of personal privilege to thank you for issuing the proclamation recognizing Black History Month in February. I think that is very important. It's especially important, I think, from the standpoint of highlighting the contributions of Black Americans when it comes to health and wellness, as you did. I appreciate that. I also want to take just a moment to indicate there are some vast disparities in health treatment and care provided for Black Americans in the United States. And so I would encourage everyone to somewhat educate themselves on what those disparities are. There's lots of underlying reasons for that, some of which boil down to simply access to good, healthy food. So I appreciate also your listening to my compelling arguments for the food pantry services through the Johnston Partnership. I don't know how many or if any of the rest of you also received an email this afternoon from Johnston School Superintendent Laura Kaser. However, I feel compelled as the liaison between the City Council and the school board, but also as a recipient of educational services myself in the past. I've been told they cannot take away my high school diploma from Johnston, nor Jim's. I did ask about his too. Excuse me, Councilmember Evans. The reality is that we are, I believe, or at least I am a proud graduate of Johnston Community Schools. I'm proud of my kids to go there. But it was asked that we spread far and wide opportunities to educate our constituents on Senate Study Bill 3080, which is affectionately creating Student First Scholarships. And there are a series of questions that Superintendent Kaser encouraged folks to understand the nuances of that. The Student First Scholarship is more affectionately known as vouchers. There is some discussion and concern about what that could do with regard to public funding of the Johnston School District as well as school districts across the state. When I campaigned, and even prior to that, I heard numerous times, as I know you have as well, folks move to Johnston because of the schools. Folks stay in Johnston because of the schools. Our teachers, our parents, our students are exceptional in what they do and the role they play in the education of the future. And quite frankly, I want to make sure that Johnston continues to be known for exceptional public schools. And I certainly want Johnston to not lose out on opportunities to be a strong and fervent educator for future generations, to lead us forward as we embrace climate change issues now and in the future, as we talk about hunger, as we talk about water, as we talk about everything under the sun. So with that being said, please reach out to your legislators if you have and need more information on that. I'd be happy to visit with you or share that email if it didn't come to your inbox. I yield. Thank you.
I was going to say something about the email too, so thank you for saying that, and I have nothing else.
And I don't either. Anything else for the good of the order? Not, we are adjourned.
That's the first time I've seen an email from her about